Well, welcome everyone to today's NAMI at Noon session. I'm Amy Brundle. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager for NAMI North Carolina, and we are thrilled to have all of you guys on for today's webinar. I hope you find this topic as engaging, hopefully inspiring as I do. First of all, of course, we'd love to thank the North Carolina Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Use Services for their support of today's webinar, um, including today's speaker, Kelly, who I'll be introducing in just a second. A couple of housekeeping items. If you have questions, please put them below in the Q&A and in the chat. I will make sure that the chat is fully accessible to everyone. Okay, good. And we will answer those throughout the session and especially at the end. So please feel free to put your questions in there and we will get to them before the end of the session today. And now I'm honored to welcome today's special guest, Kelly Crosbie, who is the director of said division of mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance use services. She has brought over 30 years of experience in providing and managing public services and supports for people with mental health, substance use issues, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and brain injury. In her current role, she oversees the public community-based system for mental health, intellectual and developmental disabilities, substance use, and TBI in North Carolina. For the past 13 years, she's served in multiple leadership roles within NC DHHS, including the Assistant Director of Behavioral Health at NC Medicaid, a COO of NC Medicaid, and the Chief Quality and Population Health Officer at NC Medicaid. So if you have Medicaid questions, you could probably throw those in too. Kelly is proud to be a licensed social worker, and she is a person with lived experience, which makes her uniquely qualified to talk about today's topic. Welcome, Kelly. We're so glad to have you today.
Thanks, Amy. I am glad to be here.
So, we're going to start off today's conversation. Of course, this has been Mental Health Awareness Month, all of May.
Mhm.
And we at NAMI North Carolina, at least, have kind of focused a special interest on mental health in the workplace and what that looks like, and the positives and the negatives. So today we're going to kind of focus on, what your mental health could look like and ways you could take care of your mental health from both a leadership perspective and an employee perspective if your workplace is, say, going through some issues. We've all been there. So just to set a framework, could you elaborate on some situations that might kind of fit under this uncertainty, chaos, and change category?
Sure. And when I saw this question first, I thought of very big situations because we're going through some of them right now in state government. But then as I reflected more, I thought about other situations and that are probably more common, but also really stressful. So some of the big things, right? Where many folks today on the call, but not all, but many folks are in human services and all of the time, especially during a change in government. So we have a change in governor, change in president. There's always uncertainty about funding, the programs that we love and care about, and how that affects our livelihood. So does that actually affect my job? So that's something very real that we're going through now, a transition and concern about loss of funding and the change of your job. But we also experience things fairly commonly like you get a new boss, or there's an opportunity for a new promotion at work. You get new staff. Maybe you were virtual and you're asked to come into the office, or vice versa. You're trying to transition to a new virtual world. You have a challenging employee, or you have a boss that you've tried to work with for a really long time, but they're just really challenging to work with. And other things too, like you just have an intense workload.
Hmm.
And you're worried about doing a good job and you want to be a great employee and you maybe feel undervalued. I mean, those are all pretty most of those are pretty common work stressors for many of us. And again, for a lot of us, we're experiencing a lot of volatility in our normal streams of funding services. And so that can create a lot of stress at work, largely because A, you're concerned about that program that means a lot to you. It's part of your mission and vision. But B, you're actually worried about your own livelihood and the future of your job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you kind of covered a spectrum because, no matter if it's a dumpster fire or if it's just a small transition, it can
Yeah.
still kind of take a toll
Oh, yeah.
on people's mental health at work.
Mhm.
Have you seen situations like that in kind of your own workplaces of
Mhm.
something changes, something kind of goes through a bit of a chaotic time period. How have you seen that take a toll on an employee's mental health?
Yes, and I can give countless examples because again, and I'm speaking from working in government, but there can be a lot of volatility in government. But one thing that we're experiencing now that I'll share as an example is we have been, many folks know that many of us are on the Dix campus, the Dorothea Dix campus. Our office buildings are. We are there, we have a routine, we have our office spaces, but the park is changing into a park, and we're actually planning imminently in the next couple of months to a move in a whole new building with a totally different layout in a very different place in the city. And that's actually causing a lot of stress for folks. It's causing excitement, but it's quite a change.
Mm.
It's a change in how you get ready and your commute, how you park, and how much that costs to pay, what your workspace is going to look like. So it's a massive change in your routine and expectations. So we see that is causing folks a lot of stress. We were actually talking about it as a leadership team last night, that we actually just need to take some dedicated time and help folks process and really listen to their anxieties and hopefully their excitements about the building, just to make sure that A, they know they're not alone, and B, we can think of anything we can do to mitigate it. And
Mhm.
so not surprisingly, you see stresses come out at work in many ways. You just see people not being themselves, people missing work or missing deadlines, people that are kind of more grouchy or have stepped back from work, maybe not coming into the office as much, maybe not even turning their camera on in a Zoom meeting. So we're seeing all of those things.
Mhm.
And those are things, again, I'm sure we'll get to it later, but those are things you don't want to miss because, yeah, it matters in productivity. You want productivity, but it also means like maybe your folks aren't okay. Something
Mhm.
isn't working for them in the workspace right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you alluded to this with your leadership team meeting, but
Yeah.
how do some of the attitudes of leadership affect
Mhm.
morale?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, right? Because we're all humans, myself included. So as leaders, though, sometimes we have to process our own feelings, but also find our own supports for those own feelings, right?
Mhm.
Because I have thoughts about the move. It changes my life, my routine, my space as well. And I've worked on that campus for so many years and I love it. And I realize it feels like a bit of a loss to me, actually. Um, but it's my job as a leader to acknowledge that, to get my own support for that, but to take care of my team. It's
Mhm.
not my job to be like, hey, team, you need to support me because this is all about my feelings. I'm human and it's okay for me to have feelings. But I do think as a leader, it should say, oh, Kelly, you're having feelings. That means your team is having feelings. So
Mhm.
that's the very conversation we had as leaders, our leadership team yesterday. And so what we want to do is make that space to make sure we're engaging all of our teams in conversations as leaders, that we're listening, we're actively asking them to talk about their thoughts, feelings, concerns, and worries, letting them know that it's normal and okay to feel those feelings. It is a safe space for them to express those feelings. And that collectively, maybe we can also focus on some positives, but also if there's solutions to some things, or maybe even some unfounded fears. So I think it's very important as a leader, like always. It's one of the things I actually enjoy about my job. It's taking care of your own psychological health, which you just got to do. Make sure you have your own sounding boards and your own supports, but always thinking about like my job is actually, yeah, it's to get results and productivity, but it is actually to care about the emotional well-being and health of the organization.
Yeah, and I would imagine that, for good conscientious leaders, there's a fine line to walk between
Mm.
you don't want to appear too detached and too pie in the sky optimistic
Yep,
about everything, because then you're
yep,
denying reality,
yeah.
but you also don't want to put your emotional needs on the people working for you,
Well said,
especially with that
Amy.
power dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, well said, well said.
Yeah. So what can be done to encourage this kind of like,
Mm.
you know, resilient, good, kind of strong working through this transition together? What strategies do you think organizations can take to kind of lessen the blow of some of these challenges?
Hmm. I do think, and this is one of the things that we're doing. So I think one of the lessons that we are learning is that it's great that we're mindful of aware of and helping people process things in the moment as they arise.
Hmm.
But that's good, but it's not good enough. What is better is if that we're doing what we can on a daily basis to make sure that we have a supportive and resilient culture at work.
Mm.
So that's really what we're looking at right now. And we think that starts with things like just making sure that um, people know that it is a safe space, and we're promoting kind of a recovery based workplace. One of the things that we noticed, I'll just give you a quick example and then I'll go back to it, is sort of one of the things that we do at our organization is to manage the 988 program, right? We're
Hmm.
very proud of that. But we have a tendency to not realize, well, 988 is for us too. So it was a
Yeah.
small change, but one of the things we actually started, we did a big lunch and learn for all of the departments just to talk about 988 in the Pure Warm line and NAMI. We talked about NAMI, Amy. Like all these resources that we give as services, but we should actually be actively promoting them ourselves within our own organizations. So we've been doing everything in our organization to think about creating a resilient culture by small things. Again, hanging up our NAMI posters across the building, hanging up our Pure Warm line posters across the building, trying to get the team together to participate in NAMI walks,
Mm.
to set up things like team affinity groups, right? Are there ways that we can find spaces and places where folks can align, maybe around common interests, and just find support and fun and recharging activities work? We are getting ready to post some workplace norms. We find that periodically we've got to check in. We were talking about this yesterday too, about how people are managing work-life balance, especially in the telework space, because a lot of folks, and you see it, you start to see people have a really hard time creating the right boundaries. They're overworking. Um, they don't know how to separate work from home. They're getting stressed
Hmm.
out. Or they're really disconnected, right? We're not managing the telework culture very well. So we're trying to make sure that we have some norms around how we telework, how we support each other, how we put boundaries in place, and simple things too. Like it's the simplest thing of all. You hear it all the time, but it actually matters. Encouraging people and setting the example of like scheduling lunch every single day,
Hmm.
not scheduling meetings in the last 2 hours of every Friday. We changed our leadership team meeting because you know when it was? 8 a.m. Monday. Is that not the
Oof.
worst time to have a leadership team? Right?
That's
Worst time,
rough.
right? But we were like, well, it's the only time we could find. And then we were like, not good enough, right? It's not
Hmm.
good for us. Like it was a really bad way to start off the week, very stressful. So I would say like overall, we're trying to practice what we preach, make sure that we're just trying to set a culture where we want you to have boundaries. We want us to have affinity groups and actually like each other and get along. We want to have workplace norms that we model for people, but also express, that supervisors express and support people. Um, so we're just trying to do more to create a better culture for folks. So so we're just a better culture. I know I'm using that word a lot, but a better culture, a happier culture, where people feel supported in the workspace. They feel like it's a place where they can talk about their needs. So when real change occurs, right? Because change does happen. So like if a grant gets cut and it impacts jobs, we can make it because we've created a strong culture, a supportive culture at our organization. So people do feel supported. They feel like they can get through the change, or we can get through the change together.
So, do you think that kind of creating that culture from the get-go is kind of the most important thing that leaders can do?
I do. I spend a decent amount of time. It's interesting. We've done some work lately, well, over the past year with the Triangle Business Journal.
Hmm.
And we are looking for more opportunities to help other workplaces be recovery-friendly workplaces. And I mean that both in the mental health arena, but also the substance use arena. And so we've been turning that same reflective lens on ourselves, saying, what can we do to create a better workplace overall? There's a couple other things that besides the culture, I think they're really practical things you need to do in terms of making sure your executive leaders are trained, your supervisors are trained, because we can't make an assumption that, oh, we're all mental health and substance use and IDD practitioners. That doesn't mean that you know how to recognize when potentially someone on your team is struggling.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean you know how to have a conversation with them. It doesn't mean that you even know what benefits you can refer them to. What is our EAP benefit? What is our medical benefit? So how do we actually practically train our executive leaders, but also our managers to recognize and also to intervene when they think someone is struggling? So I do think those very practical things have to happen. So it's not just about, I think culture is really important, right? Create the safe space, but people need to, we purposely need to create or train people, train new supervisors, managers, even ways that teammates can help teammates to recognize and intervene when they think someone needs support.
Absolutely. So I'm going to change the order just a little bit on you.
Okay.
I want to start kind of negative and go positive. So
Okay.
what are some things that employers should especially kind of avoid doing?
Mm.
Either they're trying to be helpful and they just don't know how, or they're actively adding to the chaos. Like, what are some things that good leaders should avoid when
Yeah,
trying to deal with this?
I have something that's so top of mind because I heard it in a presentation lately and it just utterly shocked me. Um, and it was kind of like using a good tool for bad. Um, many companies have an EAP benefit, right? That does
Mhm.
contain a couple of sessions of confidential counseling. And I was very excited. I heard this presentation and they were saying, like, well, here's what EAP is, here's how it's confidential, here's how it can help you. And then they proceeded to say how supervisors can use it to mandate people go to counseling. And I was like, what?
Hmm.
So that's, you shouldn't do that.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying like in certain circumstances, if you and an employee talk, and you're at your wit's end and they're unwilling and you'd love to keep them. And I'm not saying there aren't like rare scenarios where like as part of even a corrective action for an employee, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
trying to be realistic, that in the agreed upon corrective action, they do attend EAP counseling. But sort of this immediate notion that EAP can also be used for, to mandate people into counseling, I think is not good. I think employers have to be really cognizant and again, I may be saying something that isn't germane to this audience, but it is germane to a lot of audiences. So they have to be really cognizant of the benefits that they offer, and that benefit includes a robust mental health and substance use benefit, and it isn't a benefit with a bunch of copays attached to it. So a lot of times benefits are one of the things that attract people to work. It just is. And we've got to pay as much attention to not just like long-term cancer coverage, which is actually quite important for a lot of people, but what's your mental health benefit? What's your substance use benefit? And does it not have excessive copays or excessive barriers to treatment? I do think, again, that supervisors need to be trained to be able to recognize and talk with and make referrals for or suggestions for services for folks. I'm saying things people shouldn't do. So I think like ignoring the reality that people have mental health issues
Mhm.
is something employers shouldn't do. So I think you shouldn't have a bad benefit. I think you shouldn't ignore mental health. I think you should not require people to work 60 hours every single week. I think you should not have a culture where people who maybe I think the other thing about workers is we all have lives, right? And we bring our lives to work. So you should not have a culture where you're penalizing parents or friends or children because they're dealing with a stressful family issue. They shouldn't
Mhm.
be shamed for those kind of things. You should not have a culture where you're willy-nilly like doing drug tests on people. I understand that in some scenarios that actually matters, but in other cases it turns out to be a barrier for people who are actively in recovery, maybe on methadone. Wow,
Mhm.
now you've just outed them because you're making them take maybe what is an unnecessary drug screen not required by law. Um, so, um, so really, I think as leaders, you shouldn't have prohibitive benefits. You shouldn't have prohibitive attitudes. You shouldn't have a leadership culture that forces people to be robots
Mhm.
and that is uncaring, pushes nothing but productivity. Um, these are all the things we shouldn't do. And I like to think in 2025 we're building better work cultures, but that's not always the case. Oh, and we shouldn't like don't have work parties where they're only alcohol events.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, if that is the only event for people to socialize at work, and if you don't go, there's like shame in not going, right? Because the boss has put together this nice event for you, but it is at a bar. It
Mhm.
does involve alcohol, which happens a lot in businesses. That's the only reward we can seem to find for employees. That's not really helpful for people in mental
Right.
health or substance use recovery in many cases. You don't offer that ability to socialize. You don't offer them ability for FaceTime with the bosses, and they don't look like a team player, but really for their health, maybe that's not a good environment for them to go to.
No, that's a great note because I think um, sometimes when leaders are trying to create a better culture, leaning on events like that is an
Yeah,
easy win.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we don't do that, mind you, but we have like it. Somebody pointed something out to me, and that was one of those like, oh, I felt dumb for a minute, but then I felt grateful to learn something. It was a raffle event in the bigger organization. We're a very big organization, and one of the baskets had a bottle of wine in it.
Hmm.
And it just never occurred to me that that would feel bad. And I will always value the employee that pointed out to me, like, that makes me feel terrible. That is a prize that we're all voting for, and we're not thinking about the people who are in recovery, which is actually a lot of people, a lot of
Hmm.
people. We just don't talk about it. So something as small as that was meant to be a happy, fun thing, um, yeah, missed that one
Yeah.
altogether, and I was glad they pointed it out.
So, oh, actually, we just got a question, and
Okay.
this goes with a question that I was going to add.
Oh,
Yeah. So, disclosure.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Um, this person wants to know if you believe sharing struggles with a mentor, and I'll extend that to a supervisor or a boss, is smart, or can it affect your future success in an organization? Because I know that I've worked in places where disclosure was not only frowned upon, but could actively cost you opportunity.
Oh, 100%. 100%, yes. And I would say, I mean, honestly, I would say you suss out the culture and do what's best for you.
Hmm.
And I would say that not just in work too. And I'll get back to work, but sort of like we should honor ourselves, honestly, with like our own journeys and our own experience and our own struggles are us and they're very personal. And I would urge all of us not to disclose those to people who are going to trash them, right? And treat them
Hmm.
poorly and treat us poorly. I think that's just smart self-preservation. Same thing in the workplace. I do think you really need to suss out what is the culture of my organization? What's even the knowledge, skills, and ability of my supervisor? And is there enough that I can tell them in a way that makes sense from a workplace standard rather than like maybe come across like I'm dumping all my problems. Like, hey, I've got FMLA, or hey, I've got some PTO. I really need to handle a family situation. I don't want it to affect my work. My work's important to me. I'd like to take 5 days of PTO off to maybe manage a family situation. So to kind of disclose you have something, you should, you're a professional. Um, and this isn't me saying be ashamed that you have family issues, not at all. I'm just suggesting, depending on the culture of your workplace, there's probably a better professional way to disclose something. And I
Hmm.
would keep in mind, like, even the best of supervisors, they're not therapists and they're not supposed to be, and they're not even supposed to be your friend. So I would just keep that in mind too, like what you're in a professional setting and what do you want to disclose as a professional? You should have no shame. I would just realize the limitations maybe of your supervisor.
Hmm.
I'm always surprised. We just live in a society still where people are pretty uncomfortable with even something like depression or anxiety. They get some discomfort. And so just recognize that. Um, and I would say protect yourselves. But then I would urge us, as those of us who are supervisors and bosses and who have stake in companies, board members, please help us work on that issue, right? We want places where you can say, I'm really struggling. I need to take 3 mental health days off. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
And know that that's not going to hurt you. It shouldn't hurt you. That's the silliest thing I ever heard. So please don't hear me saying like don't disclose things. I'm saying be wise with yourself and know the culture of your business and then try to work to make that a better business where you can have a culture where you talk about things.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question too. Follow up is, how can leaders kind of create a culture
Mhm.
where disclosure is um, encouraged without the leader kind of stepping on boundaries unnecessarily?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where like training your management team and your supervisors is the way to go. And it doesn't have to be you. Bring in a professional to help train them because, and this is where I would actually involve your HR folks as well, right? I
Hmm.
think one of the things we also have to recognize is that um, we don't need to violate workplace standards laws by getting into people's personal business either,
Hmm.
right? And so I think that it is perfectly great and right for supervisors to say, hey, you know, this is Kelly language. You get your own language. Like, you're an important member of the team. I've noticed some changes in your productivity lately. You normally have your camera on, you normally turn things on early. You've been late with a couple of things. Do you need any help? Do you need
Hmm.
help managing your work? Is something else affecting you? How can we help you? Because it's important. You're an important member of the team. We want you to be productive. I mean, the idea of like focusing on work, the employee may choose to disclose to you then, like, yeah, I'm really struggling because, my daughter's in the hospital. She tried to hurt herself. Like, and but we have to train supervisors then to be like, I'm just really sorry to hear that. Um, You've got PTO. Would you like to take some time off? We
Hmm.
have EAP. Would you like some supports? Like, I think when you equip supervisors, I mean, part of what kind of freaks people out is not knowing what to do and feeling like, oh my gosh, someone just told me something really scary and I don't know what to do with it. So just give them handy things they can do.
Hmm.
Give them EAP, give them days off, just tell them what to say. Um, but I think as much as we can train supervisors too, that like we all have mental health issues. There's nothing wrong with having mental health issues. We all have life struggles. You have life struggles, supervisors. Um, and it has to go like up the chain. Like I want my supervisors to always know my door is open. Whatever, and you can tell me anything. And I won't judge you because that sets a model, that sets a tone as well. So
Hmm.
I think just give people tools. And again, at the highest level of leadership, you have to let people know it's okay. It's okay if you don't feel well. I have to act like an employer and help you do a good job in your business, but that means I need all the supports I can give you so you do a
Hmm.
good job in my business.
Yeah. So you've answered this to a degree, but I just want to throw it out there in case there's any other examples. What can leadership do to create some of this resiliency so that their teams can kind
Mm.
of withstand unexpected challenges in their workplace?
Yeah. And so we talked a lot about culture, making sure you have actual benefits. I think making sure that people, as much as possible, just on a daily basis, are actually focused on mental wellness
Hmm.
and having those breaks, having lunch breaks. I mean, silly things like water challenges and walking, they're not silly. They're actually really important things. They build camaraderie, but they're also saying like it's important to us that we focus on walking, exercise, healthy things, mindfulness. You can bring in trainers and offer mindfulness, offer yoga
Hmm.
sessions, um, offer even like things that we train the community in, like mental health first aid, like wellness recovery action planning, like psychological well-being. We could actually
Right.
train our staff in those things, right? Um, I had something else and I totally forgot about it. I do think though, like in moments where tragedy does happen, I do think it's important. Tragedy is a very strong word. Tragedy or misfortune or extra anxiety happens. I do think in order to create that resilient culture, you need to be transparent and over communicate and be over available in those situations,
Mm.
and if necessary, bring in additional supports. Helene, we don't live in the West. I've obviously found out right away how many staff I had who lived in the West. We had two staff who lived in the West, but many staff who had friends, colleagues, loved ones, and just were concerned about the West. So what we set up like immediately was just conversations with our staff about how things are going, just touch bases about this is what we're doing, here are supports for you. And then one of our awesome staff, I have to give her all the credit for it, she actually set up some counseling sessions. We know a lot of
Mm.
counselors, right? So in addition to EAP, just counseling spaces for folks to come to be able to process their feelings.
Hmm.
So again, that was a that was an extra event, right? So we had to up communication, up transparency, up conversational spaces for people, and actively offering like this could be really stressful or traumatic or triggering for a lot of folks. We got counseling available. It's free, it's confidential. We encourage you to use it. I'm going to use it. But we've done similar things too, as we're facing like federal uncertainties. We haven't brought in counselors, but we've certainly had extra conversations with staff, all staff, just to say, here's everything we know. I'm going to tell you everything we know. Let's get out on the table your worries, your concerns. Let's talk about our values. Our values are
Hmm.
staff, our values are the people we support in the community. But I think people in those times of stress, when you show them that you will communicate, you reduce the uncertainty and you offer additional supports, I do think that builds the trust that, okay, yeah, something's going to happen again, but maybe I don't necessarily feel so free fall because this has happened before. And when it's happened
Yeah.
before, those supports were there, that communication was there. So the next time, okay, I've been conditioned maybe that I feel like those supports might be there again. And they should
Hmm.
be. Like as leaders, we can't drop the ball. Like when we need to bring in extra supports, we should.
Yeah, consistency I think is huge. It's a great
Well said.
point.
Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. So we've been focusing a lot on leaders,
Yeah.
but our regular employees are
Mm.
not powerless in this situation.
Ooh.
What can employees do to help manage stress and improve morale for themselves or their teammates or other people in the office?
Yeah, a lot of our best ideas and workspace goodness does come from the ground up all of the time. So I would encourage you, like most people, but not all people, most people in workspaces are on teams,
Hmm.
either a formal team or a de facto team. And one of the things I actually find that is really exciting and encouraging about my team is our teams actually, because we virtual 3 to 5 days, I'm in the office every day, but the rest of us are virtual 3 days. They make a point of every month just having team get-togethers, celebrations where they share a meal and just reconnect. I
Hmm.
just think that's lovely. Our staff, not us, our staff do a quarterly all-staff meeting. We just had ours last week. So we invite everybody. We have a big potluck. We have games. We have silliness. And we do that every quarter just as a bonding activity. But that really, like, literally comes via staff. Like, they plan it all, whatever. They just tell us what to buy as a leadership team, and we show up and we engage and we have fun with everybody. Um, um, we have a wonderful employee. She started something called our Joy Board. We have Teams. We
Oh.
all use Teams, but she started a Joy Board. Totally her idea. And she's so awesome. She's going for a year now. Every single day, she posts stuff, funny stuff, stuff of the day. And we just have this ongoing board of like people who chime in. We offer each other encouragement. We just share silly pictures from our lives. And it's just this lovely online community that she has spearheaded herself because she just wanted people to like be happy and be okay.
Hmm.
We have staff who do the water challenges and the walking challenges. They just initiate those themselves. So I think that is just staff saying, hey, I care about the culture here. I care about the health and well-being here, and I want people to be okay. So I think staff can and should do that all the time. I do think there are staff too that model good behavior for others. They set up boundaries for themselves. They start the day here, they end the day here, they take a lunch break every day, and they model that for other staff. And I actually think
Hmm.
that's really good. So I think staff can just take care of themselves, model that for others. Um, and then as you move up to like managers of teams, again, I think they should be also setting the culture with their team with all of those things that I just said. But yeah, I mean, um, and I hope workplaces have this kind of culture. I hope they do, but I have something called office hours every month, and anybody can come and just they can come and talk to me about anything. And so I get the gamut. People literally just come and we talk about books because they want to get to know me better and they want me to get to know them. Some come and they're like, I don't like this about work. Did you ever think about doing this? The one employee came and she wanted to do the joy board on the
Hmm.
team's website, right? And I hope, and I defer to you if you're a worker and you're not a manager or part of the executive team. I hope that you have a company culture where you can make those kind of suggestions. But I love those kind of suggestions. So if you have that space, make those suggestions. I love those meetings with workers. And I think the other thing too is that like, you know, again, I hope you have the right kind of culture, and we're trying to cultivate the right culture where workers can talk to each other. I mean, they should, right? Commiserate, you reach out, say how you doing, but also escalate ideas to their own teams and their own supervisors to say,
Hmm.
hey, this isn't sitting right with us. Hey, we need to be communicated better. Hey, we should do these things. So Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of not shy people in my organization, and I absolutely love it. But again, if you're not in that kind of space where you don't have that, maybe that culture that is supportive in your organization, I promise you, you're not alone. There are plenty of other people in that organization who maybe feel like they wish things could change. They wish they weren't so burnout. They wish they had additional supports. Find those people. Make your own
Hmm.
culture change, set your boundaries, and find the places where you can escalate for change. But I would say take care of yourself and find others.
Yeah, I think the find others is huge. We had a comment that says, as a worker, I need someone to quote unquote dump on sometimes. I don't care to disclose information because I don't want people to look at me differently. And
Yeah,
I know coming from more conservative, kind of don't disclose anything cultures, it was
yeah,
always really helpful to have that one teammate
yep.
where occasionally you could say, I need a private meeting with you, right? And
Yes,
maybe it's just event session behind closed doors because you
yes,
have that one safe space.
yes. And I think in work too, like it's interesting that you said that because I do think like anywhere else, like you have to be smart, right? Because there are people who absolutely are a listening ear and then they lift you up, right? You commiserate
Hmm.
together and you're okay. And then there are other people who are perpetually caught in the downward spiral. And I'm sorry for them, but those might not be your best confidant because it makes you feel worse than it makes you feel better. But I do think being there for each other and having that place to just disclose and get stuff off your chest with someone who knows, right? Because they've
Hmm.
been there, they're in that same culture too. I think that's a great, great thing to have.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions about this Joy board. Are you
Ah,
saying she created the Joy board on Microsoft Teams?
yeah, 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 yeah. So, you know how you have teams, the chats?
Hmm.
She has the Joy board. All of us are registered. The whole division is registered. Anyone can opt out at any time if you want to exclude yourself from the list. So she just started a all division chat. That's all it is. It's really cool.
No, that's great because you could dial into it and check in whenever you need that extra boost.
We used it
It's
for
a
Mental
lovely
Health
idea.
Awareness Week. I mean, like
Hmm.
it's good for us to push out activities and ideas too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
So, what are some positive examples of this kind of like resilience culture doing its job that you've seen in your own experience?
Wow, that's a good one. Um, I think people are very aware of this, so I'm not, sharing things that people don't know about. But we had a we had a big federal cut about 3 months ago.
Mhm.
We some really important grants got cut that affected a lot of providers. And so after the moment of shock, right? And like, oh no, we sort of kicked in just to, okay, let's ascertain the damage and let's figure out a solution.
Mhm.
And so that was impressive for me to see because it wasn't me saying, let's work, come on, guys, get out of it, get out of it, get out of it. It was our teams and our leaders. And I really think they had that ability to be creative, to start brainstorming ways to plug some of these holes, to help us winnow down like the most critical things that we had to do right away, who we had to contact, how we had to communicate, because they've done this before. That's the thing. I mean, that's sort of and I know you know this, Amy, as do many of the listeners, right? That's the hard lesson of resiliency. You become resilient because you've been through things like this before and you've come out okay.
Mhm.
So I felt like, wow, I have a team who's been through this before, where programs have been cut and funding has been cut, and they didn't just go home and give up. There's too much riding on it. They said, yeah, this really sucks, and we're not happy about it. And some people are going to get hurt, but we've been through this before. We know what to do. We're going to do our best. So, like, watching the team do that was really, really, really encouraging for me. And I do think forgive me, like, for falling back on the most obvious of things, but, you know, COVID was obviously really devastating, absolutely devastating with the way it changed our lives and the lives lost, people we loved lost. Um, but it did, for many folks, build a lot of resilience. And the times we are in now For some people, I understand some people are okay with the times we're in now, and that's okay. But for a lot of people whose funding is being cut, with there's uncertainty about the future of the programs that they really believe in that are really helping them in their communities, I would say this is not the first time this has happened. We have been through this before, and we're gonna be okay. And it was not fun the last four times we went through it, but it did teach us a lot. We are resilient, we are tough. We've worked smarter and harder, and we're gonna be okay. But I would say going through COVID and help managing a system like that, it set us up for things maybe you wouldn't think of. It set us up to react well during Helene. It just
Hmm.
did.
Hmm.
Helene's horrible. I'm sorry that especially the folks in the West, have had to go through that devastation. Going through other things like COVID, we had so many tools in the toolbox, so many ready-made ways. But not just things, people. People were ready. People felt ready. They felt like we can do this, we can help. And that was rather extraordinary to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think your joy board example has sparked a whole thing because
Yeah.
we have a question here about doing a joy board for a group home with mental
Oh,
issues.
I
So
love that.
presumably they're not as tied to technology as a Teams chat would be.
I love that. I love that. And I really do think that things that bond our teams but also help them be stronger are just those joyful events that they have. I'm not even
Mm.
kidding. They're just potlucks, and they get around and they talk about their families and their lives and their kids, and they have a lot of fun. Um, and I think that one of the things that somebody challenged me to do a while ago is to start every day being thankful for three things.
Mm.
It sounds so, and I know you're like, oh, thank you for that Hallmark card moment, Kelly. But it's insidious in the best way.
Hmm.
Um, it really, like, mornings, I don't know, like for many people, right? Especially when you think about this in the workplace, your mind starts racing on all the things you have to do. I tell you, it's not a day goes by without a fire in the morning, right? There's always some fire conversation, leftover stuff. Oh, look at these emails that came in the night before. So you often start in this sort of like mindset that's racy and maybe unpleasant, or feeling like flooded with stress hormones. But that moment of like, okay, gotta start with the three things I'm thankful for. And there are days
Hmm.
when I can think of like nothing but like, I'm thankful for chocolate and the tree outside my house. And I can't say my
Right.
tree again because I say that every day, right? So like, but it really does force you to think about things, I think, in a really, really good way. And I think that is actually focusing on joy and happiness and encouragement. I think it's really just go with it. In all
Hmm.
seriousness, don't be like,
Yeah.
I'm too cool for that. That is too hallmarky. It is truly, it can really, in the best insidious way, just kind of like build things up. The other thing I would say, again, we got a lot of helpers on the call, right? But don't like we don't talk about mindfulness as much as we used to.
Hmm.
But I do think mindfulness is truly one of those extraordinary techniques, and I use it at work all the time because um, again, think about how the morning starts like that. Like one of the things I noticed is when I throw some caffeine onto that, whew, I'm
Hmm.
really racy, pretty irritable, right? And I get reactive. I'm not saying I let that out, but I feel it.
Hmm.
And being mindful of how I was feeling and what was triggering those feelings really helped me to make a smarter solution to like, you know what? I love my coffee. For those of you that know, but guess what? I know I bring this it's a thermos. It's like a big old work thermos of coffee. It is decaf. So I have
Hmm.
my lovely soothing drink, but I know that that caffeine, I was mindful to how my body was feeling, and I saw that that caffeine made me extra racy. So sorry, I got a little bit off the joy board, but that notion of mindfulness and purposely trying to channel your mind into thinking of good things and celebrating that with others, I think is huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think even with the decaf example, I think you touched on a good thing is that, in order to create teams of mentally well and resilient people, we
Mhm.
have to be mentally well and resilient
Yes.
people the best we can.
Yep.
So there's a personal responsibility for each of us to
Hmm.
make sure that we're at least trying
Hmm.
to bring recovery and, you know, good habits and things into our workplaces.
100%. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. So We have a question. Any tips for a team that's grown sour, cynical in the midst of their changes?
Oh boy. Yeah, and I wish I could say something enlightening besides the things that you probably already know and have probably already tried. Um, and I think many of us have dealt with that. And of course we deal with that in state government, right? And for many of us, especially for those of us in helping professions or stuck with the whims of politics when it comes to funding and the elimination of wonderful programs, it's really it's hard not to kind of get disgruntled or cynical or just feel burnt out and like, why do I even do this? And sometimes we get burnt out too, just because you know what when you use that helping muscle like for 20 years, it's
Hmm.
utterly exhausting. And if you haven't been using those 20 years to fill yourself back up, so you're not in a good space. So teams like that. I think sometimes the easy thing to do, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, is to break up the team. But all that results in a lot of times, sometimes it's good. It gives that person a new team, a change of pace, a way to reframe. So it can be really good. I think what happens sometimes, though, is you split people up and you move them because you're just moving them around and hoping that they'll get done and they'll leave. And but sometimes that's better for the health of the organization as well. I think there's nothing wrong with an honest conversation with
Hmm.
the team leader and the team. And I think there's a good way to say, look, you guys do really important things in the organization. I'm, I, I want to know how you're doing because I'm feeling like you're not feeling either good about the job, good about the mission, good about what you're doing every day. Am I reading that vibrate? Are you okay? Like I would approach it as trying to start the conversation that way. And I
Hmm.
think we have to be really careful, right? I'm going to reflect back on what I just said, Amy, because again, I recognize that I'm a clinician, I'm a therapist, but I'm a boss and I work in a
Right.
workplace. So I think just trying to make sure that is grounded in the work that they're doing, right? And we feel like you know, how are they doing and how is it affecting their work? I just think you have to be mindful of those things, right? I'm not saying be a robot. I'm not saying don't
Hmm.
care about people's feelings, but I think be wise and smart. And I think, but I always would start there. Because I do think it's worth investing in your employees. Um, and I myself, I take a lot before I'm ready to give up on folks. I'll be honest with you. So I
Hmm.
think it's good to start with how you guys finding work. Are you feeling satisfied? You feeling energized? You know, we just redid our mission and vision. Let's talk about the things your teams are working on. How you feeling about those projects? Are they feeling good? And listen. Um, Try to give them the space and listen. I do think there will be times, of course, where you'll have to have more pointed conversations if people's work performance is not being what it needs to be. And I've had situations too where I haven't certainly, nobody was not doing their job, but they certainly lost the zeal and excitement for their job. So it wasn't being done the best way that it could. So
Hmm.
I've had conversations with people too where I was like, look, you seem not as excited about this particular role anymore. Are there other things in the organization that you think would excite you? How about a
Hmm.
change of pace? Would you
Hmm.
feel good about that? Because I do think there are a lot of people that get stuck in a role and maybe they would actually really warm to a change of pace or to a new team. Um, so I think I mean, as I said, I don't know that any of my comments are that revelatory. I'm just telling you honestly how I've handled those situations. And I mean, I'm like anybody else. I've got lots of employees, and those kinds of things come up fairly frequently. But I think trying to approach them is you have a lot to give. Is this the best place for you given it? Can we think about something else? I would rather start there than just immediately break up the team or go to like, I'm going to give you a work plan. Because I think a lot of times, it's like people are actually doing their job. They're just not
Hmm.
doing it as well or as passionately or as successfully as you wish. And or when you got a whole team of them, it's just breeding kind of a toxic culture for the agency, and that's not good for the agency.
Right. Um, we have a question about kind of related, but dealing with employee burnout,
Yeah.
especially accompanied with the stress of funding loss. Maybe people are taking on larger workloads because staffing's not where you'd want it to be.
Yes.
Yeah, so kind of how could a leader approach employees that are showing signs of burnout?
Yeah. I think, wow, that's a big one. And I think of a couple levels of this. So, like, there are employees I have now that I only have one person reports to me. I'm really grateful for that. My deputy, she's absolutely wonderful. But the executive team that reports to her, there are plenty of them that I have just approached and said, look, you seem really burnt out. Can we talk about that?
Hmm.
I see that you're working 6 hours a week. I see it. You're on call all the time, answering my emails. I see you working on weekends. Can we talk about how you're doing? And I do that as a way because I genuinely care about their well-being, but I also am trying to model what I need them to pass down to their managers and vice versa. So again, that's part of creating that culture. I think also setting, I know I said it before, but I actually think setting workplace norms and saying out loud, part of the reason we're setting these norms is because we care about your health and well-being.
Hmm.
Therefore, we would like everyone to take lunch. We suggest you not take meetings at 7:30 or 5:30. You leave the last 2 hours of Friday so you can catch up on work. We do say a lot. I think it's important to say it out loud. If you are feeling overwhelmed and you have too much piled on you, you need to escalate to your supervisor. And I tell my supervisors and my leaders all that all of the time because what happens a lot, I think in a lot of workplaces, but certainly in government, is, 3 secretaries ago, you had projects. And then the next secretary gave you projects, and the next secretary gave you projects. And I've always been astonished to find out, like, I'm asking a team to do something, and it turns out they're doing things from 4 secretaries ago as well.
Hmm.
So part of what I've tried to help the team is to say, this is the projects that we're focused on right now. These are the priorities. And I've said, you can let things go. You can. Please let your supervisor know, hey, we're not going to have this program anymore. We're not going to be
Right.
working on this. But I do think you have to say those things aloud because people won't
Hmm.
feel like they can let anything down. Who gave them permission to let anything down? Um, I do think it's funny. Before Amy and I were chatting before about a boss I had who had the luxury of doing something wonderful, which was when he came back from vacation, he erased all of his emails. And he would say that to us all the time. I will never forget how he said that to us. He would say to us, I'm taking my vacation. When I come back, I immediately erase all my emails. My out of office will tell people who to go to, so I expect my team to handle things while I'm gone. And if it's that important, they will contact me again. And so he would stress again and again, you need to rest. You need to not check your email while you're away. And when you come back, you can't be overwhelmed. But as leaders, I expect you to figure that out. Who are you delegating to? How are you training and coaching your staff so they can handle things while you're out, etc.
Hmm.
So I do think, again, that's culture. And I do think so many people don't really actually take their breaks. I'm guilty of that sometimes myself. And I also know that people feel very overwhelmed when they come back. So again, I try to, when my leaders come back, if they have a hard time, I say, I need you to take the day off your back and just catch up on things and catch up on emails, not the Saturday or Sunday before you come back,
Right.
but the Monday when you come back. So I do think um, really trying to set up some norms, but also sharing those values with people, I think is actually really important. And here's one that may seem counterintuitive, actually. One of the things I'll just say we're struggling with, some of you may be struggling with it. If you have tips, please give them to us. Struggling with managing work in the virtual environment. We just
Mm.
are.
Hmm.
And I think we're seeing an imbalance. Our super high achievers are doing more than other people. We just see it, right? And there's an easy thing to do to kind of assume like, well, that's because some people work hard and the rest people are slackers. And I think that's not always the case. And I
Hmm.
do think there's a way to engage with people who have disengaged and open up that conversation to find out what they are working on right now. If it's enough, if it's filling their time, if there are other projects we can get them involved in. There's a way to engage, activate, and energize people. But it might feel like you're getting all up in their business to find out what they're doing when they're
Hmm.
not at work or physically at their desk. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. It doesn't have to be, and I think we don't have to assume people are unengaged. But I think that not balancing telework leads to burnout for all your super high overachievers. It just does.
Yeah. And so I think my last question today is, and if other people have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or the chat. But um, I I have heard examples of people, leaders, especially executives, trying to create more of an open culture around mental health and then just taking it way too far. Have you seen
Yeah.
this in the past?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think if I've seen it taken. Yes, I have. I've seen it taken too far.
Mhm.
Um, where I have worked in places that were fairly dysfunctional. It was like working at a family. It was like working with a family. We talked about our feelings. We made choices based on when we don't want to hurt Sherry's feelings. It's not Sherry's real name, but essentially, um, and that's not a way to run a business. I think it is incredibly important to care about the health and well-being and have professional and business boundaries. I just think they actually can really, really help people.
Mhm.
Um, so I have seen situations where that whole personal and professional got blurred in pretty damaging ways, I think. So they started to be toxic, and we did things around the personality of the boss, and business decisions would be made like over coffee at her house. I mean, this is not really a way to it's not really a way to run a business, and people feel that. And there's absolutely an incredibly respectful way to promote mental health, people using services, supervising know how to understand and address mental health, and also just get your business done.
Mhm.
Um, the thing that we didn't touch on is that like work, there's so many statistics that point to work being one of the single biggest stressors in people's lives. How people are treated by their bosses being the main factor in how stressful their work is,
Mm.
like more important than workload. Supervisors feel they're ill-equipped to deal with mental health issues or work strain, absolutely unequipped. I mean, these statistics are just huge, right? So it all points to the need to make sure that we're training folks and having resources for staff. But there's also statistics that talk about how valuable work is. Work makes people feel good. You feel productive, you feel accomplished. It's a huge part of people's identity. Oh my goodness. For some people, it is their identity, right? It is
Mhm.
the most important thing. We all have multiple identities, but so we want it to be a good, healthy, professional place where people feel professional and can act professional with their professional selves and excel. So I think, yes, I think you can definitely take it too far in ways that just aren't at all helpful for people.
Yeah. It's still a workplace.
Yeah, it is.
Mhm. Well, Kelly, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I mean, I know that you're extremely busy being a boss to all of these people and getting this great work done. And so we just thank you for taking some time. I wanted to let everybody know that there are resources if, say, your workplace isn't super mental health disclosure friendly and you need somebody outside the office to talk to. DHHS has a North Carolina peer warm line that you can contact. NAMI North Carolina has a helpline that you can contact, and
Hmm.
I'm going to put both of those numbers in the chat here. Um, let's see, make sure I remember what the peer warm line number is. There to go. So please contact either of those resources if you just need help, just need somebody to talk to during your workday, and maybe your boss isn't either available or the best person to talk to in these circumstances. There are resources out there for you. But also, I wanted to let everybody know that I will be sending out the recording probably tomorrow afternoon. So if you registered for this, you will receive this recording and can take some of these insights from either the chat or the recording itself, and use them in your own workplaces. We encourage you, be part of the solution. If your workplace needs these extra solutions, be part of that and make
Hmm.
those changes. Um, any last words you want to add, Kelly, before we sign off today?
Just thank you. Thanks, Amy, for doing these webinars. I love them. I think they're so awesome. And thanks to all the people that joined. And um, that's encouraging. Like we should all be doing what we can do to make our workplaces good. So thanks for just even talking about this important topic and all the people that came because they care about healthy workplaces.
Absolutely. So we just want to thank everybody for signing on. Keep an eye out for our next session, to be determined, but it will be later on this summer. And until then, we just wish everybody a very happy afternoon and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.